to Business Review, a daily program that delves into the latest and most significant economic stories, from stock markets to currency news. Business Review covers the most up-to-date developments in the global financial world.
Mexican officials and border town residents criticized U.S. President Donald Trump on August 19th for threatening to levy a tax on cars crossing into the United States to fund his signature border wall. The mayor of Ciudad Juarez, Armando Cabada, slammed Trump's proposed car tax as a political stunt aimed at garnering support ahead of the U.S. election in November. According to Cabada, whose city lies across from the Texas city of El Paso, it was an issue that gave him votes in the last election, and now he's using it again in a desperate manner to try to secure the same votes. About 73 million personal vehicles crossed from Mexico into the U.S. last year, according to data from the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, an average of 200,000 cars every day. Trump made the suggestion during a speech in Yuma, Arizona, in which he vowed Mexico is 100% paying for the wall. Meanwhile, Ciudad Juarez resident Hector Escobedo accused Trump of misrepresenting the plan, saying that instead of forcing Mexico to pay, the toll would tax U.S. citizens like himself. The thousands of Mexicans and dual citizens who cross into the U.S. daily include essential workers who help keep U.S. hospitals running amid the pandemic. During his speech, Trump also reiterated his previous threats to tax the remittances sent by millions of Mexicans living in the U.S. to their family members at home. Mexico received $3.54 billion in June, the second highest level since records began in 1995.
The investment banking company HSBC has framed Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou by fabricating evidence for its own interest. This was revealed by some legal experts who cast doubt on the authenticity of the bank's claims concerning key evidence in Meng's case. It has been almost 20 months since her arrest in Canada for alleged crimes of bank fraud, and the Supreme Court of British Columbia, Canada, heard arguments based on claims of privileges over documents requested by lawyers representing Meng in her extradition case. HSBC has emerged as a key player in the case as it submitted evidence early on that included a meeting between Meng and a senior executive from HSBC at a restaurant back in 2013. On August the 22nd, 2013, Meng met with Alan Thomas, HSBC's then deputy head of global banking for the Asia-Pacific region, in a restaurant in Hong Kong. During the meeting, Meng had made a PowerPoint presentation about Huawei's business links in Iran through a company called Skycom and Huawei's efforts in compliance with U.S. sanctions. Some 5 years later, that presentation became key in evidence in a U.S. extradition case against her, alleging she committed fraud against HSBC and other banks, exposing them to both economic and reputational risks. Song Liupeng, Huawei's chief legal officer and chief compliance officer, believes the official is innocent and hopes she will regain her freedom soon. Meng is the CFO of Huawei, not the chief legal or compliance officer. It would make sense for her to talk to HSBC, but compliance matters are not under her portfolio. Meng told Thomas that Skycom was a business part of Huawei in Iran and compliance program related to U.S. sanctions. HSBC still allegedly decided to retain Huawei as a customer based on her representation. A year before the meeting with Meng, U.S. prosecutors had charged HSBC with 4 crimes, including money laundering in Mexico, that involved at least $880 million US. The bank was fined $1.9 billion US and had to sign a 5-year deferred prosecution agreement to self-rectify and cooperate with judicial investigators. This was the 3rd time in a decade HSBC has been punished for similar offenses.
Authorities in eastern Libya will allow limited exports from blockaded oil ports to free up storage space and enable the production of fuel for power stations. a blockade imposed by the eastern-based Libyan National Army, or the LNA, and its allies at major oil ports and facilities since January has contributed to worsening power cuts in the east of the divided country. The blockade has led to a build-up of stored condensate and to cuts in the production of gas used for power generation. Output of locally refined fuel has also dropped, and financial constraints have limited fuel imports for power generation. Based on a decision by LNA leader Khalifa Haftar, only what was stored in tanks at the blockaded ports would be exported. Naji Al-Mugharibi, head of eastern-based oil facilities guards, have said. A local oil engineer said the temporary opening would allow for the emptying of tanks holding condensate in order to ease the crisis in electricity generation. The National Oil Corporation, which is based in the capital Tripoli in the west and has repeatedly appealed for an end to the blockade, did not immediately comment.
In a country blighted by power cuts, the August 4th Beirut port blast dealt a devastating blow to state-owned Électricité de Liban headquarters in Beirut, leaving offices in ruins and killing at least 2 employees. More than 1,000 employees working at EDL headquarters in Beirut, but mostly had left home on the day of the blast. Employees have been coming back over the past few days to collect what remains of their belongings. Since late 2019, the financial system has unraveled under the weight of public debt, shutting savers out of their bank accounts, triggering a sovereign default, crashing the currency and driving up poverty. This month's explosion has piled more misery onto people in Lebanon, wrecking the commercial heart of Beirut and leaving many without homes. Power cuts had made cleanup attempts more difficult and dangerous in dark streets covered with broken glass and rubble, with ever-present risk of falling debris. The blast killed more than 172 people, injured 6,000, left 300,000 homeless, and destroyed large parts of the Mediterranean city, compounding a deep financial crisis. Officials have blamed the explosion on ammonium nitrate stored unsafely at the port. For many Lebanese, it was just the latest neglect by a sectarian elite that has for decades failed to provide the most basic services like electricity.
This has been Business Review, your daily source for the most critical financial stories. Tune in next time for the latest financial news impacting the world economy.